All right, let's talk about Will Chamberlain. And I've been seeing a lot of videos of people being very critical of him and calling him overrated plainly. So I'm going to address some of the issues people have with him, and I'm going to give you guys my reason or my reasons as to why I have him as the GOAT and why everyone should have him in their top five. So let's get into it. Let's address the first issue, which is competition. Let me just say it out right now. Wilt did not play short white guys. I actually have the list of Hall of Famers here, and I'm gonna list them, and I'm gonna tell you how many games he played against them, so you guys can know. Bill Russell, he played 143 times throughout his career in total. Nate Thurman, he played 64 times in his career. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, he played 28 times in his career. Walt Bellamy, 6'11", Hall of Fame center, all-state receiver, so a very athletic center as well. Every guy I named, by the way, is pretty athletic. He played him 100 times in his career. Willis Reed, obviously, I hope you guys know who Willis Reed is. 72 games in his career. Zelmo Beatty, a guy that's pretty underrated. No, most people don't know who he is. Just do some research. You'll be able to find out very quickly. 67 games against him. Clyde Lavalette. Now, that's a very interesting guy because he's actually low-key responsible for Wilt's death. It's an interesting story, but 34 regular season games against him. Wes Unseld, 6'7", the shortest center Wilt ever played. 6'7", 280 pounds. He's the exact same height as Ben Wallace, for those wondering. But most people don't know that because, again, they just assume Wilt played short white centers. The shortest player he ever played was 6'10", built like a linebacker. Black guy. Black defensive stud. That was the shortest center Wilt ever played in his life. Elvin Hayes, 6 foot, I think he was 6'9", but he played him 22 times. Bob Lanier, 6'11", 280, 16 times in his career. Dave Cowens, 14 times in his career. Bob McAdoo, he even played Bob McAdoo, and by the way, he destroyed him. He played him 4 times in the last year of his career, and he averaged 20.5 points per game, 22.3 rebounds a game, 6.3 assists a game on 85%. He did not miss many shots against Bob McAdoo. Bob could not do anything to Wilt. I mean, Wilt had the time of his life. Wayne Embry, Hall of Fame center, he was about 6'8", with very big hands. Just an interesting fact about him. He played him 98 times in his career. Jerry Lucas, who also played power forward sometimes, so some of these games might have not been his defensive matchup, but he played him 82 times. Now, every center I just named is a Hall of Fame center. Now, you might be critical about them, but they were playing each other. So, it was like they must have been good if they're all in the Hall of Fame and they were playing each other, by the way. And keep in mind, Wilt only played 1,045 regular season games and 160 games. I've done the math. 120 out of 160 games in his playoff career were against Hall of Fame centers. That's 75% of the games. In the regular season, it's a little bit harder to calculate, but it's between 40 and 48%. So I know it's a wide range. To be more exact, it's probably 45%. That would be my best guess. Obviously, I would have to go through every game, and I don't have enough time in the day to do that. And just for the heck of it, I'm going to throw in Sweet Halbrook, who I believe is the tallest player Wilt ever played, and he was 7'3" and a very good athlete. He was actually a high jump champion, 6'2" high jump. Now, this is before the Fosbury flop, so that's actually very impressive. And yeah, because he's 7'3" as well. He played him 23 times, and Wilt put up 43.7 points per game and 24 rebounds a game. So his competition was phenomenal, and he was able to average 30 for his career while playing those guys, and he gave the business to all of them, including Kareem. All of them, he gave them the business. So it wasn't like he was struggling against them and playing great against everyone else. He was giving them the business. Now let's talk about some very annoying critical issues that people have about Wilt. People really out here saying that Wilt was selfish or that he was a stat pattern, that his teams got better the less he scored, are just being very dishonest. Calling him selfish is a ridiculous thing to do because what is your evidence of him being selfish? And I guarantee you they'll probably say, well, he averaged 50, took a lot of shots, and this and that. But if you actually do research into his career, even the year he averaged 50, he didn't do it because he felt like it. The reason he averaged 50 is because his team wanted him to. That's throughout his whole career. Every time, and I'm not even lying, go into it, you'll realize, oh wow, his team wanted him to do that. You know, and it's very hilarious how people are just very dishonest. Like, they say that Wilt stat padded his assists, which is baloney because the year before that he averaged 8 assists a game. The next year he averaged 8.6. Maybe he didn't stat pad. Maybe he was just getting better at passing, which happens with age, by the way. As the older players get, usually they become better passers. Another issue people have with him is he didn't win enough, which is ridiculous because he won 2 championships. That is a lot of championships, by the way, especially in that era when the Bill Russell Celtics ran the league. Like they literally controlled the league. It was you couldn't win. It was the hardest era to win ever, by the way. Which actually brings me to my second point. Wilt played the toughest team competition in NBA history. Only 2 years in his career did he lose to someone that wasn't a Hall of Fame stacked super team. I mean, obviously you know about the Celtics that he lost 8 times in the first 10 years of his career too. But people don't know that once the Celtics went away for a little bit, and when I say a little bit, they came back. Within a few years, they were the best team in the NBA, which is kind of hilarious to think about. But right after that, in 1970, they ran into the 5 Hall of Fame stacked Knicks team with Walt Frazier, Earl Monroe, Dave DeBusschere, Jerry Lucas, and Willis Reed. Now, if you guys don't know who all of those players are, it's okay, but just know they're all Hall of Famers, and all of them started. And the year after that, Wilt ran into the Bucks, the Kareem Oscar Robertson Bucks, the 71 Bucks who won the championship. And the year after that, to win the championship, they had to run into the 72 Bucks, which were just as good as the 71 ones, and the 72 Knicks, who were missing Willis Reed, but the finals really was in the conference finals, so it didn't really matter. And in 73, they ran into the Willis Reed Knicks again. And so he played a super team pretty much every year of his career. That's pretty much who he lost to every single year of his career, which is crazy to think about, by the way. But those are a little bit of things. Now let's talk about him as a player and how skilled he was, how athletic he was. This is something people disagree with because I don't know, they're silly. They ask for footage of things that we barely even have footage of Wilt, and they're asking for things that are probably very rare in occurrence. Like, I'll give you an example. His vertical, it was documented at 45 inches. At standing max reach was 13 feet 3 inches. If you do the math, it's 45 inches. That's what his vertical would have been. Now, people refuse to believe it because in footage, the highest you'll ever see Wilt jump is about 40 inches. 41 inches. That's probably the highest we have of Wilt jumping on footage. But the issue is, you're never going to see Wilt jump his absolute highest in an NBA game, just like the same reason you never saw Jordan or you never saw LeBron jump the highest they could in the NBA. And when they did, those clips went viral. There's a clip of LeBron where his head was above the rim, and it was the only time in his career his head was above the rim. But it was such a unique play where he was running full speed and he had to jump that high. But you only saw it once. You've never seen it again, have you? Exactly. If it was that rare in this era with cameras all over the place, imagine how rare it was to see that on Wilt. Now, that being said, I have to tell you guys, apparently there is some footage of Wilt where he was jumping and his head was above the rim. But the NBA has access to that. It's in the NBA archives. It's a complicated story, but the NBA archives has a lot of footage that people have not seen in a long time. But they don't release it. I don't know why. They could probably make money out of it. But apparently Wilt has footage like that, but the NBA has it in their archives. And I don't know, maybe they'll release it one day and it'll end this debate. But moving on. In other words, the point of that was Wilt could really jump. Now let's talk about his speed. The dude ran a 40 in 4.4 seconds, which is faster than LeBron James in his prime, by the way. He ran the 100-meter dash in 10.2, 10.3. Now, if you don't believe that he did, just know he ran the 100-meter dash in 10.9 in high school, which is still phenomenal. That is an amazing speed. He ran the quarter mile, I believe, in a minute 58, and he ran the 440 in 49 seconds. He high jumped 6 feet 11. That was his max high jump. He won the high jump 3 straight years in college as well. He triple jumped about 50 feet. He shot put 56 feet. And he broad jumped 22 feet. I don't know if people know the difference between a broad and a long jump. A broad jump is when you're standing still, let's say at the free throw line, and you were just jumped as far forward as you could, and that was Wilt's 22 feet. For those wondering how impressive that is, that the average long jump of a high school player, and a long jump is, again, when you're running and then you jump, is 23 feet. So Wilt could broad jump the average long jump of a good high school long jumper, which is pretty insane to think about, by the way. Now, let's talk about his strength. I know this one's probably the hardest to believe because people refuse to believe that a man could be this strong and this physically gifted. But a lot of people don't think Wilt could bench 500-something plus pounds, even though Arnold Schwarzenegger himself literally said he could. There's an interview of him, or in a magazine interview, where he said it. Another thing he said that Wilt could bench 325 pounds as easy as Arnold could bench 135. I think Wilt was probably a genetic freak because he was a genetic freak. So he is probably one of the best and strongest men ever. Now, the only other one that he confirmed was a tricep extension, and he said he think he could do 170, 180 pounds, but he never said that was his max. As long as I know, he might have been repping 180. You know, I know people will probably laugh at that, but I'm being honest. He never said that was his max. There's a reason I point that out. It's just because, you know, some people have used that to discredit his bench press, which is kind of ridiculous. I don't know why they would use that to discredit. It doesn't really make sense to me, but that's the truth. Now, another issue I've seen is footage. People are very critical of Wilt's footage. They will say that he wasn't that dominant or that he was not as good as Shaq. Like, they'll use Shaq as an example. And this usually comes with the Ben Taylor videos. If you guys know who he is, you guys don't know what I'm talking about. But Ben Taylor is very critical of Wilt. He has always been, as long as I'm aware of Wilt. He's the guy who started the 50 points per game is overrated. Yeah, he's really the guy who started that. But he's very dishonest in his videos because he criticizes Wilt on the context of Shaq's era. So he'll use a video of Shaq backing down in the post and forcing his way all the way into the paint and then dunking it and say Wilt didn't do that. Even though in his era, Wilt wasn't allowed to. It was an offensive foul. Another one is where he'll say that Shaq will get deep positioning and then get really deep in the post and then score, right? He would put all his weight on the player and then score in the post. Again, that was illegal in the 60s. So a lot of people use that against Wilt, saying he didn't have off-ball ability, and they'll say that he wasn't portable. Which, by the way, is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. The dude literally played on so many different teams, under so many different systems, and adjusted his game accordingly. Now, he didn't win with everything, but the fact that he could change his game and adjust his game to everything shows how portable he really was. But I guess people just don't understand what it means to be portable. They make their own definition. That's my favorite. I love saying that because it really insults them. Now, another argument people have is the pace argument. Let me address that one real quick. There's this idea that 130 possessions made it so much easier to score 50 points a game or score 30 a game. They really have this idea. They forget that the reason there were so many possessions was because the rules were so strict on them that they were limited to that. In other words, it took Wilt 130 possessions to get 50 because that's how much harder the rules were on him. But if he played in the 90s and he wanted 50 in a game, it wouldn't take him 130 possessions. It would probably only take him 75. And he probably would only do it when his shot was falling, which would have been probably very consistent in the 90s, to be honest. But the pace argument, that's a whole unique video. There's so many issues with it. The estimates that they have for the 60s are wrong. That's just the truth about it. I know, if you've done any research about it, you'll find out very quickly they're wrong. The way they calculate it is a bit silly. There's a lot of rules in the 60s that don't make sense, that don't fix it. Like, I'll give you a simple rule that will make you think, like, oh, wow, I never thought about it. But prior to 1970, if someone missed a free throw and you tipped it in, you wouldn't get a point for it. You wouldn't get 2 points for it. Your teammate would get 1, even though today's NBA counts for 2. Now, Wilt's probably the best offensive rebounder ever, and probably the best tip back, the best at tipping shots back in. How many points in his career do you think he gave away? Keep in mind, he has 23,000 offensive rebounds. Rebounds in general. How many of them were offensive rebound? A couple thousand, right? I would say maybe 5, 6, 7, 8,000 were offensive rebounds. I wouldn't be shocked. I know that's a crazy high number, but, I can't. There's no other number I could come up with personally, but what do you guys think? So, he might have averaged more points. He might have broke the scoring record more times. It's a bit silly, but he would be the all-time scoring record holder, technically, with that simple rule. I'm not getting to it, but I'm just pointing out how weird some of the rules in the 60s were that hurt the players in the past. Another rule that sucked for the 60s players, or not another rule, but another thing that hurt Wilt Chamberlain was the Celtics' ability to pretty much break the rules to guard him. I don't know if you have seen footage of the Celtics guarding Wilt, but they would zone him in an era where the zone was supposed to be illegal. And there was no illegal defense rules. There was no three-point line to help Wilt with spacing. So he got screwed. And obviously he wasn't allowed to back down in the post, so a lot of his shots were even more difficult than they should have been. So that's why I always tell people, if he played in another era, he might be the undisputed GOAT. I can't take him over Jordan just with my eyes closed. I have to admit Jordan actually has a case over him. So, and I said I was going to make the video, or I was going to give you guys an argument for why I had Wilt number 1, but this video is getting kind of long. So I might have to change it. I will just say that there's never been a guy more dominant than Wilt, in the sense that he was, in his career, he was the best scorer in the NBA for a while. He was the best playmaker a couple years in the NBA, which is something that's hard to believe, but it's probably true, by the way. He was the best rebounder. He was the best defender a couple years in his career. He was the best finisher, he was the best at so many things in his career that people don't realize that. And I'll give you, like, most people don't know this, but Wilt was the best shooting big man for a long time because of his fadeaway. And it's kind of hilarious to say that now, but it's the truth. That dude shot a lot of fadeaways, and he was very efficient with them. And he was a low turnover player, so it's kind of cool to know now. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I kind of got lost in some of the conversation, so if you made it this far, man, you're a genius, because I would have already clicked off. But if you guys have any topics you would want me to talk about, make sure you like the video and tell me any critical, like, literally, if you hate Wilt Chamberlain, you don't think he's that great, just list me a couple of questions. You don't have to, like, go off and list a million of them and try to argue against what I said. Just tell me some reasons that, like, you would want me to address, like, you want to actually hear me talk about. And that'll be all. Thank you for watching. God bless you. And I hope you guys enjoyed the outro, because I love showing this to all my videos. So thank you.
Alright, so I end my videos like this every single time. You know, just remember that Jesus Christ died for your sins, paid for all your sins with his own blood, and all you have to do is trust in him, that you may be saved. The moment you trust in what he did for you instead of what you do for yourself to get to heaven, you'll be sealed for heaven. So in other words, don't trust in your own works, but trust in the works of his. You know, God bless you. I hope you guys enjoyed whatever video it was. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.